The Maelstrom Hunter by Crimson QB Sage, Chapter 18, A Minor Hiccup. A Team Archfiend dorm room. Naruto stared at the weapons in his hands. Unlike his usual weapons, this one possessed a unique set of features. It was a kunai much heavier than the average kunai. There was a familiar sealing formula written on the hilt, and the blade itself was tri-pronged. This was a Horician kunai, the same kind that his father Minato Namikaze once utilized in combat. Turns out that the little surprise Tsunade left in the scroll she gave him was his father's set of kunai, the same set of kunai he used to single-handedly decimate the thousands of Iwo shinobi during the Third Shinobi War. So despite understanding the functions of the seals engraved along the kunais, Naruto wasn't able to figure out how to properly use them in battle. In his past attempts at training with the kunais over the week, Naruto was only able to travel between kunais every half hour, and even then he always appeared 50 to 100 meters away from the kunai. Damn it, what am I doing wrong? Naruto thought. His musings were broken when the door opened up and the rest of his team entered. Hey Naruto, what you got there? Roshi asked. Nothing, Naruto said, pocketing the kunai before the others could see it. And the team from the Elemental Nations arrived today, Han stated. Which village? Naruto asked. Konoha, Han replied. The room became eerily quiet. They're up to something, I can tell, Naruto stated. I say it's a trap, Roshi said. I say we don't know enough about the situation to come to any accurate conclusion, Han countered. I know somebody who might though, Naruto said as he stood up. Gear up, team. Oh boy, Han said. Here we go again, Fu stated. Team Ruby dorm room. Alright guys, today's the day. The investigation begins, Ruby exclaimed as she leapt off her mattress and onto the floor, arms raised excitedly. The four girls are having changed their combat outfits. Rice wore a pure white dress with black edgings and two columns of pure black buttons on the abdomen. There was a print of her snowflake emblem on her back in pale blue, rather than her original outfit's white snowflake emblem. The inside of the skirt portion of her dress contained black frills, and finally, she wore thigh-high white high-heel boots with frilly black thigh-high stockings that came up slightly above the top of her boots. Blake wore a white V-neck zip-up shirt that was black along the bottom and had mid-length sleeves. Her belladonna flower emblem was printed in off-white on the left side of her shirt. She wore black pants that had a vertical gray stripe on the outer side of each leg, and she wore a black belt with them. Attached to the inner side of the belt was a black, somewhat curved, banner-like piece of fabric that hung from the back and extended further to her hips. On the underside of this was a thinner, longer, similarly shaped purple piece of fabric. Her black high-heel boots came halfway up her calves and had a pair of belted straps across them. She still wore her black ribbons on her arms and had her black bow over top her cat ears. Yang wore a collared cream top over a black shirt, and over top of the former was a black article of clothing that consisted of a raised collar, a strap across her collarbone, and mid-length sleeves that were gold at the bottom. Around her neck was a pendant that had a smooth, round purple gem set in a round piece of metal that had a point coming off the left and right sides and a small oval shape coming from the bottom. She had a pair of crooked black belts with gold accents across her hips and a purple piece of fabric with lilac lace around the edges hanging from her left hip. She had a dark gray article of clothing coming from down from under her cream top that was either a miniskirt or part of her black shirt. It had virtual belt straps going down into her thigh-high black stockings, which had her burning heart emblem printed in yellow on the outer side of each leg near the top, and a row of 4 gold pyramid studs above each knee. She wore a pair of black boots with a series of belt straps across them. On the back of each boot at the top was a large white ribbon tied into a bow. And lastly, Ruby was wearing a long-sleeved light gray shirt with black belted cuffs near the end of the sleeves. Over top of the gray shirt was a black piece of clothing with 2 vertical lines of red stitching that resembled a cross between a corset and overalls. She wore a red skirt with a large black colored print of her rose emblem on the side of it, and the inside of the skirt was black. She still wore black stockings and her black and red boots. A few pieces of metal arranged in an abstract shape were attached to her sleeve on her left arm. As usual, she wore a red cape with this outfit. This cape was short like the one she wore with her uniform, but with a scarf as part of the hood. I'm glad to see we're taking this so seriously, Weiss said sarcastically. Hey, we've got a plan that's moderately serious, Yang said. Right, everyone remember their roles, Ruby asked, looking around to her teammates. You and I will head to the CCT and check the Shini records for any other dust robberies or, incon- or inconsistencies, Seeing as I'm in the family, it shouldn't be a problem, White stated. The White Fang has regular faction meetings to hand out orders and recruit new members. If I can get in, I can hopefully find out what they're planning, Blake stated. I have an old friend on the shady side of town that typically knows everything going on in Vale. Getting information out of him shouldn't be too hard, Yang stated. Great. We'll meet up tonight near Yang to go over what we found. Let's do this, Ruby exclaimed, pumping her fist. Yeah, a new voice called out, turning to the window. Team Ruby saw Sun Wukong as he hung upside down by his tail in their open window. The whole team was taken aback by this. Sun? Blake exclaimed in surprise and alarm. How did you get up there? Yang asked. It's easy. I do it all the time, Sun asked. You do what? Weiss questioned. I climb trees all the time, Sun said without reacting to Weiss's scowl. He flipped into the dorm room. So, are we finally getting back at that Torchwick guy? We are going to investigate the situation as a team, Blake said. Sorry, son, we don't want to get friends involved if we don't have to, Ruby stated. That's dumb. We should always get friends involved. That's why I brought Neptune, Sun said, gesturing out the window. The girls leaned out the window on top of one another in a cartoon style to see outside. Standing outside the window, his back against the wall, was Neptune, and hanging off the nearby tree branch was Roshi, who was wearing a new outfit. The red-haired monkey faunus wore a red high-collared sleeveless shirt over which he wore a brown shoulder pad on his left shoulder with half a dark brown cloak covered his left arm. His hybrid pistol knives were sheathed along his waist, the holster strapped to two black crooked crossed belts. He also wore black cargo pants with multi pockets, black steel-toed boots, and black fingerless gloves that complete his outfit. Sup, Neptune said. How did you even get up here? Ruby asked. I have my ways, Neptune replied. And why are you here? Weiss asked Roshi. The rest of the team is doing the same as you guys are, Roshi replied with a shrug of his shoulders. Or is the rest of your team? Blake asked. Off doing their own investigations, Roshi said. Seriously though, can we come in? We're like really high up right now, Neptune said. Inside the dorm room, the group stood in a circle as Ruby devised the new plan. Alright, I'll go with Weiss. Son, you go with Blake, Ruby said before pushing Neptune towards Yang. And Neptune, you can go with Yang since she doesn't have a partner. Everyone good? Actually, Ruby, why don't you go with Yang? After all, she is your sister, Weiss asked. But Weiss, who would go with you then? Ruby asked innocently. Well, I guess, Weiss started. I'll go, Roshi said. Alright then, Roshi, you're with Weiss and I, Ruby said. But, Weiss stammered as she was pulled out of the door by Ruby, Roshi following shortly after. Cross-continental transit. After the group went off to do their intended tasks, Ruby, Roshi, and Weiss eventually arrived at the cross-continental transmit. Wow, I forgot how big the transmit tower looks up close, Ruby exclaimed. You should see the one in Atlas, Weiss said. That was the first one, right? Ruby asked. Correct, Weiss replied. The trio began walking down the path towards the building. Atlas developed the cross-continental transmit system to allow the four kingdoms to communicate with one another. It was their gift to the world after the Great War. Oh, look at me. My name's Weiss. I know facts. I'm rich, Roshi mocked, acting high and mighty. This caused Ruby to snort in her hands at Weiss's frown. Don't be a pest. Besides, the only reason you're here is because we allowed you to come along, Weiss said, her eyes narrowing at Roshi. Love you too, Frosty, Roshi said. And the only reason we're here is because you like the tower so much. We could have just as easily made a call from the library, Weiss stated, pointing accusingly at Ruby. I know, but it's so cool. Oh, I'm going to take a picture, Ruby exclaimed, grabbing her PDA from a pocket under her clothes. In her excitement, the device was launched from her hands, bouncing along the pavement until it landed at a familiar person's feet. Oh, drop this, a person said, picking up the PDA and extending towards the clumsy teen. Penny, Ruby asked in shock. Penny said, similarly surprised. Where have you been? We haven't seen you since that night at the docks, Ruby exclaimed. Sorry, I think you're confused, Penny said, suddenly hiccuping and throwing the PDA into Ruby's hands. I've got to go, she said before turning quickly and walking away. What was that about? Weiss asked. I don't know, but I'm going to find out, Ruby said before walking in Penny's direction. You go make your call. I'll meet up with you later. Wait, don't leave me with banana for brains here, Weiss exclaimed, reaching out towards Ruby. It's so cold, Jackie Frost, Roshi said, faking a shivering action. With Penny and Ruby. Penny, where have you been? It's been weeks, Ruby asked as she caught up to Penny. There seems to be a misunderstanding, Penny said. What? Ruby questioned. Penny continued to walk away as Ruby slid down the rail next to her. Penny, is everything okay? Penny continued walking forward without any reaction before Ruby grabbed her by the arm. Penny, please stop, Ruby exclaimed, causing said girl to stop and listen. Look, I don't know what's wrong, but you have to listen to me. Those guys we fought at the docks, we think they're up to something big, something bad. I need you to tell me what happened to you that night, please. As a friend, Penny sighed before glancing at her side swiftly, walking over to Ruby's side and leaning in close. It isn't safe to talk here, Penny said, looking around suspiciously, much to Ruby's confusion. With Roshi and Weiss, Roshi and Weiss walked towards the grand glowing lobby of the tower, the latter with pride as the duo avoided the central terminal and headed straight for the elevator doors, which slid down automatically and closed when the two were inside. Hello, welcome to the CCT. How may I help you? The CTI asked, the voice being projected from a panel near the door. Yeah, can I get a number 5 combo meal with no onions? And Roshi started, only to be whacked comically upside his head by Weiss. I'd like to go to the communication room, please, Weiss said. Absolutely. Could you please place your scroll on the terminal to verify your identity? The AI asked, Weiss doing as she was told. Perfect. Thank you, Miss Snee. Upon the elevator's accent, Weiss' expression shifted from pleasant to serious. Ow, did you have to hit me so hard? Roshi complained. Did you have to act so idiotic? Weiss countered. She received no response from her red-haired partner. As soon as the elevator doors opened, the duo entered the room. Upon entering the room, 4 symbols were seen on one of the computers. The symbol was of twin axes and wreaths, with 3 flying swords pointing down, a spear and shield inside a fragmented circle, and a precious winged shape. Weiss walked up to the front desk, where a holographic security appeared in the seat. Welcome to Beacon Cross Continental Transmit Center. How may I help you? The AI asked. I need to make a call to the Snee Company headquarters in Atlas. Weiss stated. Absolutely. If you could head over to Terminal 3, I'll patch you through. The AI said. Thank you. Weiss smiled and nodded before walking over to her assigned cubicle-like computer. Roshi followed after her. Weiss sat down at her assigned terminal, taking a deep, unhappy breath to prepare for the call ahead. The face of a short-haired brunette appeared on the monitor, with the Snee snowflake rotating behind her. Thank you for calling the Atlas. Oh, Miss Snee, good afternoon. Would you like me to patch you through to your father? I think your sister Winter might be here as well, the operator said, having recognized who was calling shortly after speaking. No, thank you. I was actually wondering if you could find some files for me. I've compiled a short list, Weiss said, pulling out her PDA and placing it into a slot on the keyboard, creating a series of noises as the operator looked at the data from her side of the computer. I see. If you don't mind, what may I ask is this for? The operator asked. School project. Weiss lied. There are some sensitive documents on this list, ma'am, the operator said nervously. Well then, I'll be sure to treat them with care, Weiss said. Right, very well, the operator said as more noises were heard. The data is being transferred to your scroll now. Wonderful. That will be all then, Weiss said. Are you sure you wouldn't like me to patch you through to your father before you go? The operator asked. Yes, I'm sure, Weiss said, briefly loosening her smile and quickly replaced it. Well then, have a nice time with your date, the operator said teasingly with a small grin, having noticed Roshi standing in the background. Before Weiss could make a retort, the call was dropped. As soon as the call dropped, so did Weiss's happy act. Daddy problems? Roshi asked, noticing the look on Weiss's face. I'd rather not talk about it, Weiss said. With Han and Fu, the 2 sane members of Team Archfiend were currently at the library, using one of the terminals to do their own investigation. Like Team Ruby and their teammate Roshi, the duo had changed their outfits as well. Han was now wearing a black collared black long sleeve shirt, black baggy pants with bandages wrapped at the bottom, dark brown shinobi sandals, black gloves, and finally his signature red straw hat was atop his head. Over top his clothes he wore dark red samurai armor with a shotgun axe strapped to his back. Fu wore a white and red sleeveless shirt that showed off her midriff, under which she wore fishnet armor underneath. Her shirt, white apron skirt had been replaced by a form-fitting white pants and a red belt with her 2 Tonfa machine guns at her side. Over her midriff shirt, Fu wore an open white form-fitting jacket with red running from the armpit area down to the end of the jacket, the color white cutting along where the area the zipper was. Okay, let's try this again, Han said. Computer, show me files using the keyword Elemental Nation Encounters. As ordered, the computer brought up at least a dozen new articles that featured the discovery of the Elemental Nations. Same results. Computer, filter out all new articles, Fu commanded. The computer filtered out all new files, leaving only 2 files left. The duo tried to access the first file, only to have a yellow box pop up with the words "Access Denied" appearing in bold red text. Closing the box, they tried opening the final file, only for the document to be about the crew that discovered the elemental nations. Damn it. Now what? Han asked. We go to the location Naruto told us to meet up at, Fu said, with Penny and Ruby. Penny stood alone near a 2-story building with a patio of furniture as she looked around nervously when a hand grabbed her shoulder, causing her to jump. She turned to see Ruby grinning. She smiled in return. Shortly after, the duo began strolling down the street. I wish I could help you, Ruby, but I don't know anything about those men, Penny said. Well, what happened to you that night? We were all together and then you just disappeared. Were you kidnapped? Ruby asked. Oh no, nothing like that, Penny said. Then where did you go? Ruby questioned. I've never been to another kingdom before. My father asked me not to venture out too far, but you have to understand, my father loves me very much. He just worries a lot, Penny stated. Believe me, I know the feeling, Ruby said before grinning. Penny grinned back. But why not let us know why not let us know you were okay? I was asked not to talk to you or Weiss or Blake or Yang, anybody really, Penny said. Was your dad that upset? Ruby asked. No, it wasn't my father. Penny started before she could continue. She and Ruby heard the sound of megaphones announcing something. Turning around the corner to look at the platform in the center of a plaza where the holographic image of James Ironwood was seen before 6 androids known as AK-130 androids, who were in turn standing in front of 2 large metal storage cases with spear and shield emblems on their doors. The AK-130 has been a standard security model of Remnant for several years, and they have done a fine job. Wouldn't you agree? The hologram of James Ironwood stated. The clapping of the gathered audience caused the drones to take a jerky bow. But the Kingdom of Atlas is a kingdom of innovation, and fine. Well, that's just not good enough, is it? Presenting the Adlesian Knight 200, the doors to the cases rolled up, and 6 new, bulkier, shinier automatons stood at attention before knocking their obsolete predecessors down to the applause of the watchers. Smarter, sleeker, and admittedly a little less scary, the robots flexed and posed as a demonstration. These models will become active later this year, but they won't be alone. Now, the Legion military has always supported the idea of removing men from the danger of the battlefield. However, there are still many situations that will undoubtedly require a human touch. The last line drew Ruby's attention. Ruby, Penny asked nervously. So our kingdom's greatest minds, in cooperation with the Schnee Dust Company, are proud to introduce the Atlesian Paladin. The hologram of Ironwood exclaimed, his image being replaced with the hologram of a robotic white behemoth featuring hinged pistol legs, large guns for hands, and a rectangular head, standing at least twice as tall as the knights below it. Now, we couldn't have him here for you today, but these mechanized battle suits will be soon defining the borders of our kingdom within the year. Ironwood said. Ironwood's voice spoke. Whoa, Ruby said, hunched in awe. Ruby, maybe we should go somewhere else, Penny said with concern. At the side of the stage, 2 armed soldiers saw Penny, pointed her out, and calling in backup. Penny backed away and then broke into a dead run, which snapped Ruby out of her weapon awe-induced stupor. Penny, wait, where are you going? Ruby asked. She turned to look back at the soldiers chasing after her friend and realized Penny's situation before swiftly following her in an attempt to catch up down the winding alley. Down here, she went this way, one of the soldiers exclaimed. Penny and Ruby ran across the street with the soldiers following them. Though a honking car nearly runs one over, he manages to brace his hands against the hood, which somehow stopped the vehicle, and his partner ran along after the girl. Ruby was still trying to catch up with Penny, but a high stack of crates on a flimsy support was easily cut down by crescent rows, causing a wooden avalanche of boxes to block the path. Seeing Penny right ahead of her, Ruby leapt into the air and landed on the alley wall, ricocheting off to grab Penny through the middle. This way, Ruby exclaimed, grimacing before the 2 disappeared in a flash of red and rose petals. Ruby dashed away as fast as she could while carrying Penny, but the strain was too great and they crashed to the ground a short while later, with Ruby falling all the way into the street. She got up slowly, and in her dazed state didn't notice the large truck coming up from behind her until the honking was too late of a warning. She stood up just as she's about to be hit, but from out of nowhere, Penny pushed Ruby out of the way and held her palm out. In the split second where the two made contact, the ground beneath Penny cracked and crumbled into pieces, and the truck, which happened to be driven by Edward Eldrick, elderly shopkeeper of the store from dusk till dawn, was lifted a little ways into the air, but the girl's sheer strength. Penny placed the truck down, and Edward stared in awe at the crumps in his hood, just like hunters who got saved. Penny, Ruby asked, her eyes wide, slightly terrified, and uncertain. "Are you okay?" Penny asked Edward. "Uh-huh," Edward said, nodding, obviously scared. Penny began backing away, looking at Ruby's frightened expression, then at the bystanders murmuring to each other in an attempt to understand what just happened. In her panic, she ran away from the Atlas soldier still chasing her down and bumped into Ruby, knocking the poor girl out of her stupor as her friend tries to get away again. "Penny, come back!" Ruby exclaimed as she started going after Penny, as the people looked at the destruction Penny used with her bare hands, and the soldiers found they'd lost their target. Penny stammered, coming to a stop when she got out of the alleyway, looking around for where to run next. "Penny, please, what is going on? Why are you running? How did you do that?" Ruby asked, coming up to Penny. I can't. Everything's fine," Penny exclaimed, starting to hiccup with each lie. I don't want to talk about it." Penny, if you can just tell me what's wrong, I can help you," Ruby said. No, you wouldn't understand," Penny said, retreating from her friend. "Let me try. You can trust me," Ruby stated. "You're my friend, right? You promise you're my friend?" Penny questioned, finally relenting as she came up to Ruby's face desperately. "I promise," Ruby said softly. "Ruby, I'm not a real girl," Penny said, showing Ruby the toll of stopping the truck that would have killed her. Parts of her palm skin had been ripped away, revealing the gray metal underneath. Penny stared sadly at Ruby's face, not completely astonished by her friend's secret. "Oh," Ruby said. "Penny, I don't understand. Most girls are born, but I was made. I'm the world's first synthetic person capable of generating an aura," Penny exclaimed before turning her head to the side sadly. "I'm not real." "Of course you are. You think just because you've got nuts and bolts instead of squishy guts makes you any less real than me?" Ruby questioned, taking Penny's hands in her own. "I don't, Penny said, leaning in close to Ruby's face. "You're taking this extraordinarily well. You're not like those things we saw back there," Ruby said, tapping her chest. "You've got a heart and a soul. I can feel it." Oh, Ruby," Penny said, grabbing Ruby into a hug and shaking her back and forth. "You're the best friend anyone could have. I can see why your father would want to protect such a delicate flower," Ruby said with a muffled groan. "Oh, he's very sweet. My father's the one who built me. I'm sure you would love him," Penny exclaimed, releasing Ruby as she was back to her happy self. "Wow, he built you all by himself?" Ruby asked. "Well, almost. He had some help from Mr. Ironwood," Penny stated. "The general? Wait, is that why those soldiers were after you?" Ruby questioned. "They'd like to protect me too," Penny said. "They don't think you can protect yourself?" Ruby scoffed. "They're not sure if I'm ready yet. One day, I will be able. One day, it will be my job to save the world. But I still have a lot left to learn. That's why my father let me come to the Vital Festival. I want to see what it's like in the rest of the world and test myself in the tournament." Penny said. "Penny, what are you talking about? Save the world from what? We're in a time of peace," Ruby stated. "That's not what Mr. Ironwood said," Penny stated. "What?" Ruby questioned. "That kingdom, the elemental nations, this isn't the first time they've been encountered," Penny said. "I don't understand," Ruby said. "Check down here," a soldier yelled from nearby. "You have to hide," Penny exclaimed, grabbing Ruby by the shoulder and lifting her above her head effortlessly. "Penny, wait, what are you doing? What do you mean by this wasn't the first time they've been encountered?" Ruby asked. "You don't have to go with them. I can help you." "It's okay, Ruby. They're not bad people. I just don't want to get you in trouble. Just promise me you won't tell anyone else my secret, okay?" Penny asked, throwing Ruby in the trash and lifting the lid so she can still talk. "I promise," Ruby said. "I can't say much. Just search for Derek Westbrook and ask him about Operation Whirlpool," Penny said as Ruby lowered her head into the garage as the lid was put down, allowing her to peek a little at the scene outside. "There she is," one of the soldiers exclaimed. "Salutations, officers!" Penny exclaimed. "Why were you running, and what happened to the other girl?" the soldier asked. "What girl? I was by myself all day," Penny said before hiccuping loudly and smiling. You shouldn't cause such a scene," the soldier said. "Are you okay?" the second soldier asked. "Just a scratch," Penny said, showing off her injured palms. "Penny, your father isn't going to be happy about this," the first soldier said. "Please, just come with us," the second soldier said. "Yes, sir," Penny said. Ruby looked on. Ruby looked on in sadness as she watched Penny and the soldiers walk away until a rat screeched from below her feet, causing the young huntress to fall and close the lid on herself. Chapter end. Omake, how it could have gone montage. The movie trailer part 1. "This summer," a deep voice narrated. "It's a trap," Roshi screamed, his eyes looking in opposite directions, giving him a derpy look. For a brief second, the red-haired monkey Faunes had the appearance of a strange fish-like alien wearing a white suit of sorts. "Okay," Han said awkwardly. From the producers of this Gaia, Samsara's memories, "I need to make a call to Schnee Company headquarters in Atlas," Weiss stated. "I'm sorry, Weiss. I'm afraid I can't do that," the AI said, the image of it becoming nothing but a glooming red dot. "What's the problem?" Weiss asked. "I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do," the AI stated. "No, I don't," Weiss stated. "This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it," the AI said. "Do you have any idea what this thing's talking about?" Roshi whispered. "I honestly have no clue whatsoever," Weiss whispered back. I know what you and Frank were planning to disconnect me, and I'm afraid that's something I cannot allow to happen," the AI said. "Who's Frank?" Roshi asked. "And what do you mean, disconnect you?" Weiss questioned. "Dave, although you took very thorough precautions in the pod against my hearing you, I could see your lips move," the AI stated. "Who's Dave?" Roshi questioned. "What pod?" Weiss asked. "Dave, this competition can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye," the AI said before the image disappeared and the lights turned off, followed by what appeared to be a powering down sound. "Well, now what?" Weiss asked. Roshi thought before a grin appeared on his face. "I've got an idea." Hours later, when the elevator the two were in was finally pried open, on the ground level people were treated to a strange sight. Sitting on the ground was Roshi and Weiss, who were strangely enough playing rock, paper, scissors. Tally marks were on each side of the contenders, Roshi having 57 and Weiss having 17. And the writer of Shakunetsu no Koi, the AK-130, has been standard security model of Remnant for several years, and they have done a fine job. Wouldn't you agree? Wouldn't you agree? The hologram of James Ironwood stated. The clapping of the gathered audience caused the drones to take a jerky bow. "But the kingdoms of Atlas is a kingdom of innovation and fine." "Well, that's just not good enough, is it?" Presenting the Power Rangers. The doors to the cases rolled up, and 6 new robots appeared. Each was a different color, and in order from them left to right, there was a yellow, blue, green, red, black, and pink robot. The 6 colorful robots knocked their predecessors down before shouting all as one, "Go, go, Power Rangers!" Smarter, sleeker, and admittedly a little less scary, the robots flexed and posed as a demonstration. "These models will become active later this year, but they won't be alone. Now, the Legion military has always supported the idea of removing men from the danger of the battlefield. However, there will still many situations that will undoubtedly require a human touch." The last line drew Ruby's attention. "Ruby," Penny asked nervously, "so our kingdom's greatest minds, in cooperation with the Schnee Dust Company, are proud to introduce the Evangelion," the hologram of Ironwood exclaimed, his image being replaced with the program of a giant red robot holding a rather large gun. "Any questions?" "Yeah, how will it be effective if it's so damn big?" A random bystander called out. "You're an idiot. Have you not heard the 5th rule of anime? The law of mechanical mobility, second law of anime motion?" Ironwood questioned, causing everyone to sweat drop. "Adventure goes fictional." "This way!" Ruby exclaimed, grimacing before the two disappeared in a flash of red and rose petals. Ruby dashed away as fast as she could while carrying Penny, but the strain was too great and they crashed to the ground a short while later. With Ruby falling all the way into the street, she got up slowly and in her dazed state didn't notice the large truck coming up from behind her until the honking was too late of a warning. She stood up just as she's about to be hit, but from out of nowhere Penny pushed Ruby out of the way and held her palm out. In the split second where the two made contact, the ground beneath Penny cracked and crumbled into pieces, and the truck, which happened to be driven by Edward Ulrich, elderly shopkeeper of the store from dusk till dawn, was lifted a little ways into the air. But the girl's sheer strength, Penny placed the truck down, and Edward stared in awe at the crumps in his hood, just like the huntress who got saved. Like a great neighbor, a farm state is there. Edward mumbled. Suspense. Ruby, I'm not a real girl, Penny said. A dark chrome visor with a red outline of where her eyes would be appeared over her face. I'm RoboCop. Action! Naruto leapt from a tall building in slow motion, a large burst of flames exploding behind him. The Maelstrom Hunter, the title screen read, coming soon to no theaters. Short story start. Remnant Declassified Operation Whirlpool. Part 1. First Contact. It's been 4 weeks after Penny told Ruby her secret, along with the names Operation Whirlpool and Derek Westbrook. Here we find the leader of Team Ruby standing in a dimly lit bar, sitting at the counter drinking shot after shot with a cigarette in his right hand. Was a tall man standing at 5'9". He wore a worn-out, faded brown leather jacket, a very dirty plain white shirt, blue jeans, and a pair of black sneakers. Derek Westbrook, Ruby called out, said man lifting his head slightly. What do you want, kid? The man, now identified as Derek Westbrook, asked. I want to talk to you about a certain mission, Ruby said. Operation Whirlpool? Pfft, forget about it, kid. There ain't nothing to talk about, Derek said, waving his left hand dismissively at the girl. Yes, there is. I heard that you are a part of it, and I want to know what exactly happened, Ruby said. You're not going to leave until I tell you, are you? Derek asked rhetorically, getting a nod from Ruby, causing him to sigh. Well then, you might want to take a seat. This is going to be a long story. Only 25 years ago, somewhere over the Okino Okunote, 10 bullheads flew by the near-endless blue horizon. Various Atlassian soldiers were loaded onto the vehicles as they had their weapons primed and loaded. Stay sharp, Frost, a man said. The person in question stood at 5'10" and wore the standard Atlassian foot soldier uniform, which consisted of light brown clothes, a beige flak jacket, and light brown helmet. He also wore black sunglasses and held an ACR-68 with holographic sights in his hands. This was the leader of Team Metal 1, aka Sandman. You really think that we'll find anything out there? Staff Sergeant Derek Frost, Westbrook asked. In his hands he held an M4A1 with hybrid sight and grenade launcher. They wouldn't send the lead Delta forces to deal with it, to deal with nothing, Sandman yelled over the sound of the bullhead. You ladies done talking over there? A new voice called out. The person in question was sitting on the opposite side of Sandman and Frost, wearing the same military outfit as the others. He had dark skin, black eyes, and stood at 5'7". This man was Metal 2, aka Truck. In his hands was an MP5 with a red dot sight. Can it, Truck? You're just as curious as I am about what the hell we're being sent for, Frost commented. Gotta admit, it have to be something really big to need us, another voice stated. This time it was from a man standing at 6 feet with blue eyes and tan skin. He wore the same military uniform as everyone else, along with a camo baseball cap, and held an MK-14 with ACOG G sight in his hands. This was Metal 3, aka Grinch. This Overlord Metal 1, do you copy? A deep voice said over the radio. This is Metal 1, I copy, over, Sandman said. Delta Force should be arriving at the designated location in 50 kilometers. Be advised, you and the other teams will not, I repeat, not have any backup or any aerial assistance. Good luck. Overlord out, the voice said before the communication was cut. Alright, team, you heard the man. This is a covert op mission. Everything we see, say, and do will be classified from this moment forward, Sandman stated. It was supposed to be a simple mission. We'd go in, see if the land was hospitable, and that would be it, Derek said. But I'm guessing it wasn't, Ruby questioned. Derek nodded. He said no. Shortly after we landed, did something go wrong? Derek answered. As soon as the lance bowhead landed on the patch of dirt, Delta Force began to set up a makeshift camp. Team Anvil and Team Granite were in charge of setting up defenses. Team Onyx and Team Viking were in charge of setting up the campsite, and Team Metal was tasked with scouting the nearby area. Truck, Grinch, Frost. Anything in your sights? Sandman asked. Negative, nothing, Truck replied. Same here, Grin said. Hold on, I see movement, Frost said. All 4 members of Team Metal on guard. Silence loomed over the area, save for the sound of nature itself, when suddenly a swift movement was heard. Over in the trees, Sandman called out. No, it's coming from over by those bushes, Grinch exclaimed. I've got movement coming from the right, Truck said. It's moving too fast to be a Grim, Frost stated. Then what the hell is it? Sandman asked. Before he could get a reply, a small knife-like weapon with a sizzling paper tag was thrown near the group. The four soldiers had only a second to react before there was a large explosion with its source coming from the paper tag. The explosion was powerful enough to knock out the four men, as the last thing they saw before they blacked out was the four pair of feet approaching the group. The four soldiers awoke hours later, only to find themselves tied to chairs in a dimly lit room. Oh, good, you four are awake, the mysterious voice stated. Who's there? Grinch called out, struggling against his binds. What village are you from? The voice asked. What? Truck questioned. What village are you from? It's a simple question, the voice said. What the hell are you talking about? We came from Atlas, Frost stated. Atlas? Where in the name of the sage is this village? I've never heard of a village called Atlas in the Elemental Nations, the voice said. Elemental Nations? Frost questioned. Who are you? Sandman asked. Oh, where are my manners? The voice said. Stepping out from the shadows was a tall man standing at 6'1", wearing red samurai-like armor. He had dark purple eyes, long, straight, vibrant red hair, and a Fu Manchu machete beard combo. My name is Haran Uzumaki, Sandem Uzukage of Uzuzikakure. End of chapter 18.